say, right?
Mhm.
That's the best way to live. And so Lee, please.
Well, yeah,
It's yours.
yeah. Thank you so much. And again, a shout out to Bill Lair for putting up with us and the process of writing this paper. And I should mention that I do have co-authors, Sai Bolla, Professor Danielle Smith, and doctoral student Jane Apio-Carey at Syracuse University, and as well, in addition to Bill, Kwaku Antwi from the Africa Open Data and Internet Research Foundation in Ghana, who are not with us right now. Okay, so first, let's like why the title of the paper is like focusing on or digitalizing the grassroots, focusing at the local level. So why? And we start in the paper kind of with a historical analogy back since we don't talk about the 1930s enough, right? And we don't talk about the Rural Electrification Act enough in TPRC. Somebody has to do it. So they're here more widely known, of course, is the 1934 Communications Act passage, but that was followed 2 years later in 1936 by the passage of the Rural Electrification Act. And rather than throw up that well-known old curve that I think I learned in Marvin Servu's classroom many decades ago, I'm throwing up this one, which is the shape of the curve of electricity in rural US going from 1900 to whatever, 1970 or something like that. Okay, so the shape of the curve matters, right? Okay, so when did the curve shift? Oh, right after the passage of the 1934 Communications Act and the Rural Electrification Act that brought electricity to rural America, rolling out. So you're not going to really have telephony in areas where there's no electricity to power the lines, as was needed back then, as I also learned from Marvin. Then so that parallel effort, it wasn't enough to have the 1934 Communications Act. There had to be a way to get electricity to people, which wasn't there before. And so once that happened, then you got this kind of joining meeting and rapid growth in energy in rural America and connectivity as well. Okay, so there's a relevance for this now as we get to Africa. And not just Africa. As of the last statistics, 34% of the planet does not have any internet at all. That's 2.6 billion people. That's 100 million less than 2022 data. So we can project ahead unless we change the curve. We'll be there by 2049 that everybody has some access to the internet, probably. But we can do better than that. Now we'll just sort of pause with the background on this paper and the prior ones. This is the third in the series of TPRC presentations about some new innovations and interventions that we've developed going back to 2017 to reporting kind of live, like from this very fresh new technology that was taken to the top of the most dangerous volcano in the world, and Mount Nyiragongo, because the Goma Volcano Observatory sort of insisted that we go out, like get this technology out of the lab because they needed it right away to try to save lives. However, we were trying to help them deploy this and get like to 30% internet penetration out of 100, where we're from about 4 or 5 at the time. But Democratic Republic of Congo has, and North Kivu province, exactly where we were, has more UN peacekeepers than anywhere on the planet. There's more like 12 different guerrilla groups fighting, and the country's under sanctions from the US like forever, and you can't bring in like new tech beyond. When this was an experiment, we could get an experimental prototype in, we couldn't get anything after the experimental prototype in to help directly. In 2021, we reported on, like, that was a surprise to me, like the next two after Congo went to New York City public schools, which was not what I expected, but there's like an amazing wizard of a 3rd grade teacher, former NIH manager that does amazing stuff in the Brooklyn and the Bronx, and and he has like an authorization to do anything with new tech, apparently from New York City Public Schools. And we saw, and oh, guess what? Even in rural even in New York City, full of loads of fiber, if you're in neighborhoods in the Brooklyn and Bronx, your school and low-income schools, you do not have good internet, and you could use an internet backpack to connect just as if you were on top of a volcano in the Congo. Of course, there's been like a lot of money spent in Washington and flowing out to address that in a large way here in the US, and that's not really the focus of the paper. And now tonight and here, and to Bill's frustration, we are in the middle of like a real policy process with the United Nations. And I expected when I submitted the abstract for this paper to be able to quote and cite more thoroughly a white paper that is still under embargo with the United Nations for at least a couple more weeks. So I have a picture from that, but so I don't have authorization to. But I'm a professor and I wrote it, so I can talk about it. And second frustration is I thought we have just a little bit of snippet of data from doctoral student Jane Apio-Carey, and I expected to include more of her data, but she's a PhD student, a doctoral student, hasn't yet defended her thesis, and I thought her professor should not rip her off and publish her data in this paper now before she's defended her thesis. So that's a kind of apology, but I do have this look from the front lines of where we are with the process in going forward from this over this period. So what we're speaking of is this, what we call the Internet Backpack, sort of a technology platform for community internet. The pictures of it from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So having a bundle of connectivity and energy by 2022 was kind of obvious need if you bring it to Ethiopia. And before then, this work I should give a shout out to like National Science Foundation and many years of research on sort of connecting at the edge and working out how to coordinate managing resources, whether hardware or software, so cyber physical systems at the edge. This system, so it's basically, it has satellite, it has cellular, it has Wi-Fi, it has IoT, and it has energy. It's a microgrid. It has its own sustainable, it's a power energy balance, because Marvin taught me well that to make sure that we did not overstrip, like, so there's no laptop in the thing because it sucks up too much energy. It's just, it's small devices with a battery, solar panel, and you can sort of sustain connectivity anywhere on the planet indefinitely right now today with this thing, except possibly North and South Pole, but most of the Earth. So, and all of Africa. Okay, and it's not that complicated because it's not. This is the 6 steps. Like I'm not gonna walk through this, but it's like do this, and do this, and you're connected to the internet anywhere on the planet now. And it's something where we're assuming like you don't need the electrical engineers, you don't need the well, there's no customer service. You good luck. You just here it is. You go. You're on the internet. At the moment. So of course, senior government officials will need lots of handholding and extra help, right, to manage this thing. But the basic premise is like anybody can do this, and anybody can. We've seen already elsewhere. So essentially, that's really what we're talking about, is like and this is just, it's off the shelf router, it's off the shelf satellite, it's off the shelf everything, but bundled. And with one thing that we will do the full disclosure on in a moment. Now the little bit of data. So this is live. Actually, we've stolen the Internet Backpack from the Ghanaian school kids and disconnected their school and libraries for a week or two because we had to take it to the African IGF meeting a few days ago. So children are suffering literally because of our policy people. And then we're going to take it to Japan as well to show it off to more policy people. and then the kids can go back to work and do their homework. But basically, what's the difference is we're not assuming, again, as it's a community resource. So this is not for one person. We're assuming it's designed, again, back to Marvin's training, it's designed for up to like 20 to 25 simultaneous users. We've had more than that at its peak, sharing the connection, sharing the battery, sharing whatever, connecting for energy, health, education, emergency response, whatever purposes. And we'll keep going. And I've just got 2 more slides. Okay, so what does this thing actually cost, or how does this go? And this is where we need like further research, I guess I should, is beyond the bare bones. Essentially, this is a humanitarian technology effort where 16 African nations, the African Union, UN, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UN, IGF, and nonprofits are basically, because this is like, if you take this to the VCs and they say you got technology that helps like the poorest people in the world, and they'll just say, okay, next meeting, you know. So this is literally, it's grassroots, it's people in Africa. The lead software developer is a guy that took it to the top of the volcano in DRC, which is always makes me a little nervous to have him in this conflict zone province, but he's amazing, brilliant. So it's been basically, it's been a grassroots collaboration all along, and you can get connectivity anywhere for roughly or less than $1 a day. Now that's today. There's larger, this is not the end theoretical design limit. A better version that Marvin builds would have like automatic fallover from one network to another, and what more AI and machine learning capabilities built in. That's part of what I meant to do, but we haven't done it yet. And we don't expect like everybody to use this, but it can be deployed right away. So we're, again, in discussions to work with 16 nations, 5 or 6 that we would try to go with first. And then if you read the paper, you'll see how this ties directly into saying the universal service policies that don't permit this or don't reimburse for this don't work. They need to be reformed. And that's what we're advising, again, under embargo in that white paper that I couldn't release yet, the African governments to do. We do need further help and welcome everybody to sort of join in as this rolls forward. And I thank you for your time.
This was fascinating. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed reading the paper and thinking about it. I have 2 questions, but I'll start with one because I want to open it for others as well. When you're saying, say grassroots, but the grassroots aspect of it, the fact that somebody's carrying the backpack, right? In other words, we still need, if we're trying to define this idea that you're working, we still need somebody from the top to fund this, to create a policy to distribute this. In other words, the grassroots aspect is not that the idea or the connectivity is coming from the ground up, but the fact that you need the people on the ground to do that. Sort of philosophically thinking.
Well, so yes, I am. I appreciate you going right to the sore point of the contradiction of talking about policy reforms and the grassroots. So far, we have not, this has been independent of government action. And in fact, the key bargain to get us to this point was 2 nonprofits, Syracuse University and Africa Open Data and Internet Research Foundation, recognizing to get this kind of promising technology into volume, to create a supply chain that could actually get this and get prices down, we could not rely on government. So we just sort of had to do it and work with other, like the Internet Society and other groups. And then only, so that's really how this is being handled as a humanitarian initiative. And there will be, again, in a couple of weeks in Kyoto, Japan, the announcement of a new nonprofit that basically you want, instead of buying a cow to, feed a family, can, click this button, connect a village kind of thing starting. So that will be very grassroots. Anybody can help make it happen. And because governments are asking, we are telling them what they can do to facilitate, but we don't actually need, we're not using we don't need, it's an infrastructureless technology. You don't need a new spectrum. You don't need anything other than in Africa, the promise not to steal them and not to, try to tax them and everything. So it's coming in as these initial shipments would be shipped in as a humanitarian technology with the basically, if you want to mess with us, okay, we got other countries we can try to help with it. We can't work with you. So I think we're still there, but it would be nice if for the most remote communities, the satellite connectivity charges, that's true. That just is not something we could get the tech to them and they could get on it, but they could not stay connected without some public support efforts. So thanks.
Okay, yeah, I would say it's just that, yeah, I think what your comment was, I think this is largely a reaction to that, in that we're not asking policymakers necessarily this to be close. It's not you should do this and you shouldn't also do all the other stuff that I spend most of my time talking about what you should do, so this sort of stuff. This should be a compliment. You certainly should get out of the way, because this could happen without you. And it's not a rural urban thing, because as Lee pointed out, there are people anywhere. And you want competition. So even once you solve the universal service, you'd like to have these options. And so the next generation of this box, you are design architectures and laws. For New York City, where if someone says, I don't like what Comcast is doing, I want to come in and do something else. And I'm part of another project we're giving a paper on Saturday, which is designing the technology for the US. And that's why we got involved. So basically that's about edge users trying to do lower edge computing and saying, like, obviously most people are going to say, why wouldn't I get it from Amazon? Well, you would. Why wouldn't you look to the national people to solve the problem? You should, but they should not by killing programs like what we've talked about, because the places where it could work are really different, the economics of the site. And also these people getting them on now, a lot of too much of the broadband policy hasn't focused on the time, getting people on tomorrow, not, there'll be better technology in a couple of years. This is the whole problem with the BEAD program, the $42 billion. Fiber to every home, and the initial rules basically foreclose using wireless technologies for doing it. It's crazy. It's just bad regulation.
Bingo.
Yeah. Please.
All right, so I admit I'm old. And I'm so old that I remember when the USF charge was about $3.5 on a bill. And the object of USF was to connect everybody with a telephone. And toward the end of that process, I remember studying it, we put out a paper that said that the only people at that point that were not covered were Ted Turner and his llama farm in Montana. Mm-hmm. And sure, that was a high-cost area, though. Shouldn't care about that. So then that's when they invented schools and libraries, and suddenly USF had something to do, which it did. Mm-hmm. Then somebody decided broadband for all. Think about it, any economist knows that's a subsidy from Microsoft and Apple. So I'm not exactly sure what a taxpayer would have. I'm very wary of anything USF, because I'm wary of cross subsidies. Africa obviously differs in some major respects, and that wouldn't get to the second thing. Satellites. They're everywhere. They always have them. We're talking about Africa. Intelsat has been serving them since 1971. Mm-hmm. Because I've been involved in a lot of Intelsat bashing lately. Intelsat is dying to continue to serve them. And just on a whole separate note, the Africans are bashing Intelsat, and yet it's still there. There's, one lab in Starlink are up. Yes, their monthly charge is going to be too much for that. But some CSR program will pick up something. The ITD will pick up something. It seems to me that if you don't care about latency, GEOs are great. Care about latency, LEOs are great. And that it happens to be now that every littoral country in Africa has a huge fiber connection.
Mhm.
And when I looked a month ago, every landlocked country has at least one fiber connection, although it's one.
Mhm.
So I kind of wonder why we spend so much time on this thing. I would think that there would be easier solutions.
Okay, so first I tried to kill and get everybody to stop talking about universal service at the time of the development of the Telecom Act of 1996 and tried to get to talk about universal access instead. I worked on it, submitted papers. At the end, I tried to publish a paper called The End of Universal Service, and I couldn't even get an academic journal to accept that title as the graphs were going down. So finally, I came to accept the term, even though what I really mean, and I didn't say that till now, is universal access. And that's really what we're talking about ultimately, because what's broadband is different if you're on top of a volcano. It's like do you want to see a commercial? No. Do you have time for a commercial? No. So you don't, what matters is, varies in these circumstances. There's large parts of Africa, of course, what we're premised on, like the best solution is if you can tie this back to Wi-Fi and be from the fiber, don't use a satellite, don't use a cell network. But if you're not near Wi-Fi, you can get on a cell network, and then you can share the cost amongst 20 to 40 people because what is a per capita income again, and the daily income in many of these communities we're talking about? This makes broadband affordable, and they get some broadband, and they can use it for schools, and they can use it for education, they can use it for healthcare in ways that they just individually cannot afford. This reflects the reality of the circumstances and also the need for flexibility. So like if you're many parts of Africa, the only way to connect is going to be satellite. That's it. So that's why you have it there, even though you tell people not to use it and hope people don't use it. Anyway, and there was one more part about the policy prescriptions here. So again, the inefficiencies, it's all here in Washington. It's the Congress like locking it up and continuing to pour. It's like it's the lobbyists of the big telcos insisting on keeping the big subsidies going for that universal service fund into their pockets, even though it wasn't helping rural Americans for a long time. But that's a different story here. Here in Africa, who supports what we're doing? The telcos do, because we're bringing them revenue. If they connect to their cell tower, they got customers. They know people are poor there. So if it's one way or another, they're supportive of this. The governments are who suggested tying this to universal service. It wasn't my idea. It's the universal service regulators of Africa talking about this already. And I'm saying, okay, if you're going to talk about it, this is what we suggest you think about how you go about it. So they're right now sitting, because their universal service programs were designed mirroring some of the dumb aspects of our own policies. Several, like Costa Rica has hundreds of millions of dollars sitting there, which doesn't make any sense to put. They're not going to spring a fiber to some village on a mountain, right? It just doesn't make sense. They'll never get the cost back. This can work for the people on top of the mountain or in the rural communities. And when it makes sense to do something different, do something different. Yes,
Marvin.
Could one imagine a wisp in a box with the technology that allows you going farther distances than Wi-Fi and serving a somewhat larger region? Obviously, you need bigger battery, more solar power, and so on, but it's certain scale economy there.
Yeah. So actually, we're in the Dominican Republic, like private Wi-Fi. So you could do like a private 5G. So you could put up a private 5G across the community. That would be a better thing. So
Complexity of 5G is a lot larger than some of these WISP technologies.
Well, it's not really. It's pretty cheap. You could do this for real for over a couple miles. Anyway, so between what I'm really talking about is just like this first phase. What we bring next is wireless infrastructure. That would be the advice into these provinces, a wireless backbone, and then endpoints of different types. That was what we advised in that first. Going back, you didn't have to remember my 2017 paper, and that's what we said back then. So like a gigabit fiber backbone and then wireless endpoints. That's kind of the model, and this is This is just like, you want internet tomorrow, this can get you internet tomorrow.
Yes.
So you had said it's $1 a day, and what's the underlying satellite service, and how does that play?
So I've been,
I'm.
so now I get to do the full disclosure conflict of interest. You know, these are my personal views saying, so I'm a, you know, a co-inventor, and my name's on the patent. I was on the board of the company that makes this. I'm off the board since 2021. I do have a financial interest in the company that makes this, IMCON. So I do have some knowledge about the cost of these pieces and the components. I have not, but I welcome others should do further research as this goes forward. What was the specific piece you wanted to know about the cost on the satellite? Oh, the satellite right now is BGAN in Marsat, but it could be something else, and has been something else before. And like, so right now that's the challenge is this, again, this balance, the power balance, energy, weight balance. I was trying to keep this at 15 pounds. It's now about 25 pounds, and having an antenna that's, most satellite antennas you're not expected to have it in a backpack, right? So having a small enough antenna that can actually get a decent signal, that's the design constraint for this sort of form factor. But there's LEO, this, you know, Starlink now or something else, you know, could be in there. So LEO, MEO, something else, it could be in there. Right now it's in Marsat.
Yes.
So you were talking about trying to provide services to the unserved market and the underserved market. Just wondering where the data coming from, because, you know, all communities have to have some kind of location where congregation of people. I'm just wondering, where are you planning to go out to all of that? Because when I look at the data, I mean, I look at some of the data specifically because that's the easiest network, and having wireless local, you know, it's easier than, as you said, put fiber in the ground. Just wondering, where are you getting this so that you know exactly where you're getting the maximization of?
Okay, so that's kind of the
that cost issue becomes a very determinant factor for me.
Basically the cradle point router, essentially, like beyond when your cell phone would have no signal, the pack still has a power, is a basic access repeater off the tower. So the sort of the optimal sweet spot is, you know, 5 to 7 kilometers outside the range of the cell network, where there people still live and they can't connect, and the pack can, and it can connect to local tower, and they can have a strong signal. And so just going on a quick Costa Rican story, that, you know, so the idea is, like, again, we're not going down there. This is to be cheap. That here's the thing, good luck, you deploy it, you become an internet somebody in your neighborhood, somebody in the community has to be designated the internet backpack operator that has to learn how to push those 6 buttons, right? So so they're saying, okay, we're getting it connected. I'm in, again, upstate New York, and helping them debug it there, and they're saying, oh, it works here, but we want to move it somewhere else in town. I say, well, sorry, don't move it. You know, you got to stay where it works here. It works there. That's because there's no RF engineer going out and probably, you know, studying these things. We're sending it out into communities, and the communities figure out where to work, and where, like in Ghana, they decided to put it in the library and have the school kids all congregate. Okay, that's a good model. It's up to the communities to figure it out. We are in partnership again with like Internet Society. So Internet Society, ICANN, UNIGF, the multi-stakeholder types, nonprofits will be involved as we, universities in country. We're not going to do this just like from upstate New York, again, with partner universities. So we have partners that understand the needs of the local communities. In Costa Rica, it was like the local fire department people that then said, like, this community and this community really where this needs to go. And then they tried to steal one away from them because they said, hey, we're the emergency people, you know, we really need this. And I said, I can't take it away from the kids once they got it.
So it's not a cohesive network, it's just hotspots.
Say again?
No, yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you can have 20 in an area and they can mesh.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. You could, the more.
Like Edward Orton's study of like what it will take to Africa, the way they actually thought is they look at remote sensing data. And Facebook also did projects to figure out where are the places, even under the best sort of cellular expansion plans, are not going to get broadband or any connectivity because there isn't anybody that's got a solution. Now, in some of those places, there's nobody there, and so there won't be a pattern. thing, but all you need are 20 people. And if the pack doesn't, if those 20 people don't like it, they take it somewhere where people do like it. So
Yeah.
it could be-
And actually, the pack itself is, again, it's just a bundle. This was the basic research, was this wireless grid, this like not set of devices that have some security relationship, knowledge amongst themselves, that, you know what, you can split it up. You say, oh, you don't, in Costa Rica, we found out we don't really need the satellite here. Okay, we took it somewhere else. You know, that's even more remote and more rural. And that's how it sort of lives on.
The local governor of some region says he's got the libraries.
Yeah.
And so then you deploy 4 of them to the libraries. You say, well, so this is a thing for libraries, so it has to be every library in Africa. No, that kind of thinking gets in the way. And the comment about universal services, I agree with Lee. I would have shot the universal service program we had a long time ago. But fact of the matter is, they exist. It's a fire hose, and lots of people are on board for lots of reasons. And the point is, can we make them a little less stupid? Because they will exist. And then it's a question of how much stupidity is going to exist. We can argue about that, and you know, just direct these things.
Any more questions? I have to say personally that this, you know, goes well with what I've been doing in recent years, working with communities, and looking at their individual needs. And I'm just wondering, in one of the communities I work with is ultra religious communities. They want to be connected, but they want to be filtered. So how is that, would that apply to this type of as an alternative, instead of joining the, I mean, I might work in Israel.
Yeah.
Access is not an issue.
Right.
It's universal. So the question is, can this be an alternative network to be used by communities that are, would like to have some different type of connectivity?
Okay, so again, in the earlier research phase, we were working with indigenous nations here in the US, and also like there's some that don't want anybody else to know their language. They want their cultural artifacts to be their own. So having sort of privacy, security, and human rights, I haven't disclosed that I've been sort of secretly working on this for many, many years. And so every pack comes with kind of a whole bundle of governance and rights, but it's actually, that's an ethics potentially. Of course, like we can't force people to follow it or do it, but it's basically, it's your own little secure cloud. It's really a cloud to edge system. So your Israeli communities can define their own edge cloud compute environment. That's what this really is. And they can set the rules for that, and they can keep, exactly. So we want to make, in Africa, we want to make sure other people are not ripped. Like if it's Syracuse University involved, we cannot do the usual Western data thing and like rip off everybody's data from the start. So we're starting on the opposite end with like, we can't know anything because we're under IRB, you know, we really can't. We cannot pay attention to what people are doing on the internet. That's a violation of federal law. So we can't, so we have, that's where we're blocking for those reasons, what we know. Now, but if you have the pack, you would know, again, somebody else could do it, use it a different way. And in your community, you can use it, you can define the cloud, that's sort of the environment to how you want it.
Great, well, we have 1 more minute, so.
You talk about edge cloud, and I wondered how much computation is in the back. I assume you have a diesel processor or caching.
I forgot to mention the software-defined data center. No, well, but I did forget. So yeah. So we have you have a data center in the pack, you too, as this rolls forward. And again, so like you could have curriculum and material, actually some materials out there, and then edge storage and edge compute both in the pack.
Okay, well, thank you very much to our I don't know if people want questions, and I'm sure that you can answer.
Thank you.
We have a break now. I just wanted to note to know there is a coffee station out here for those of you who see the distance of the other building as being too strenuous. You can have coffee here if you want to stay for the 2 meetings here. Otherwise, we'll continue at 11. And thank you all very much.
And thank you, Anita.
Yeah, but not exactly the same. My first comment was unexpected.
Yeah.
Like I had a trouble with this bottom up approach if you're triggered.
Right.
Because, yeah,
Well,
versus like bottom up, that the community have to essentially. But what you mentioned, oh, if you don't like it, you leave, right?
Great to see you.
Great to see you and to hear more about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so again, it's true, it just completely, bottom up so far, we have not been able to get it out. And but with the cooperation of the governments and because their universal service programs are interested, then it's okay, if you want to reform your problem, they already have in Kenya, they already have reformed their universal service program to support community networks, but that's like, Kenya and Argentina, I forgot what I forgot to mention now. So a few countries have started to make their programs more flexible to permit, like basically, why